can be said about TLC that hasn't been said before? The biggest selling R&B girl group of all time, and such a rare, unique team in that, in the most literal sense, could not be duplicated. The super duper entity of T-Boz, Left Eye, and Chili represented a brand of authentic girl power that we hadn't seen since before the release of their first album in 1992, and hasn't been duplicated on the same level since their official disbandment in 2002. Yeah, they've had one-offs since that period, but I think that all would agree that it will never be the same without the full original lineup. So despite the occasional money grabs explored by the current group, I'd rather remember them at their best. I have a deep appreciation for the way that the group was willing to always step out of their norm with every release. Starting their career as a loony collective of young girls with a subtle, serious undertone, but largely intent on expressing their perspective with vibrant and fun energy. Ending their career with a worldwide following and exploring a much more universal sound and appeal that strayed away from the youthfulness on their first album and portrayed them as a serious force to be reckoned with. But the middle portion, while being one of their more controversial eras, without a doubt was when TLC evolved from a successful R&B trio with youthful, colorful imagery to a group with serious music-making ability and maturity to match their talent. And this shift is solely thanks to one album. CrazySexyCool is a diamond-selling masterpiece created under the tension of label problems, personal drama, and near-career collapse that endures through a visual growth that the group displays from debut to sophomore album. In this video, we explore its creation and effect in turning TLC into the biggest act of R&B in the 1990s. By the beginning of 1993, TLC was one of the biggest acts in R&B, making huge waves after their then two-time platinum debut, Ooh on the TLC tip. 3 top 10 singles and 1 top 30 single would turn them into viable stars with everybody's attention, but it can't be emphasized how much the group was counted out by their label and management. What really put them over was greater than the music, and that isn't to diminish the record because it's really good, but the personality and camaraderie that the girls displayed in each song, video, and promotional appearance really distinguished them from other girl groups at the time. Unlike most lady bands from the 90s, every member was essential to their makeup and ultimately irreplaceable. T-Boz was the chill member with a unique voice that gave them a sound that couldn't be duplicated. Left Eye was the group's fun, eclectic energy and their biggest driving force creatively speaking, in addition to supplying an X factor through her raps. And Chili created a great balance by upping the trio's feminine energy and assisting as a more traditional vocal complement to T-Boz's deep, raspy texture. These pieces created the ultimate supergirl group, and after a big run opening up for MC Hammer on his national tour in 1992, and another tour with Bobby Brown as headliner in 1992 going into 1993, TLC was ready to continue their momentum and begin production on their second album. But along the way, deep turbulence was on the horizon for the Atlanta trio. TLC ended their leg on Bobby Brown's Getaway Tour on February 28th of 1993. Expecting a huge payout for their work on a successful run that sold out in most cities, they were disappointed to learn that they were not earning any real money to make a comfortable living, primarily stemming from their less than fair contract through their production deal with L.A. Reid's then wife, Pebbles, and her company Pebbletone. What started as a simple renegotiation quickly evolved into a very messy breakup between two parties and a long drawn-out legal case that resulted in TLC finally firing Pebbles as their manager, but remaining on Pebbletone. This was a stressful situation for sure that would only get worse with time, but that's a story for another day. Production for the album would begin shortly after the alteration, and the group methodically requested that each song be centered around the theme of crazy, sexy, cool. A word that was coined by Left Eye while the group was on an overseas tour in Europe. This phrase describes each member's individual personality. Left Eye being the crazy, Chili the sexy, and T-Boz the cool. But also serves as a means to explain how the synergy of the group often intertwine and how one member can occasionally carry the traits of the other when they're a unit. Sessions for CrazySexyCool began in late 1993, primarily taking place in the girls' base of Atlanta, but it also consisted of a few sessions in New York and Los Angeles. And initially, they were steady and mostly turning out demos for material that would eventually make the album. But in the middle of recording, outside forces involving the group's most eccentric piece to their puzzle would ultimately alter the album's overall direction. In 1993, Left Eye began a years-long relationship with Atlanta Falcons wide receiver Andre Rison, a romance that bloomed so fast that Lopez moved into Rison's mansion the first night that they met. And through the group's legal woes, Rison would occasionally support the girls financially. Unfortunately, this relationship was very tumultuous, with the couple fighting on a regular basis and Rison allegedly being possessive over Lisa's every move, all while being promiscuous with other women in the process. Eventually, this reached a fever pitch on June 9th, 1994. To be honest, this story has been told numerous times by numerous people with so many varying details, Left Eye and Andre included, and I don't want to drag out a story that's frankly been beaten to death for 27 years. So here are the cliff notes. After a long night of both Lopez and Rison partying separately with their respective entourages, the two met at Rison's mansion and immediately began to physically fight. It was so bad that Left Eye's lip was busted open and she eventually blacked out from the scuffle. After waking up from the chaos, Lisa took an assortment of sneakers that Rison had purchased earlier that day, threw them in his bathtub, and lit them on fire. Unfortunately, the fire would spread, and within minutes, Rison's entire mansion was set ablaze. This was a PR disaster indeed for all involved, but for better or worse, it put even more mainstream attention on TLC, and that would launch the groups on a path that would elevate them from being popular to being infamous. Left Eye was arrested on arson charges a day after the fire and got released on a $75,000 bail. By December of that same year, she pled guilty to her charges and was sentenced to 5 years probation and ordered to serve time at a halfway house after admitting that she had done all of this in a drunken stupor. Due to Left Eye's time in rehab over this period, her contributions to CrazySexyCool are significantly reduced compared to her presence on Ooh on the TLC tip. Whereas she appears on 10 of the 15 songs on the group's debut, she's only present on 4 of the 16 records on their sophomore project. The trade-off of this is that T-Boz and Chili take the reins and become much more prevalent, and the records lose a small amount of their fast-paced, hip-hop heavy influence and gain a much more mellow, vibey R&B essence that puts a greater emphasis on harmony and melody. A trait that's further beefed up through the inclusion of Deborah Killings, a background vocalist that's been described by Big Boy of Outkast as the 4th member of TLC.
Deborah Killings is like she was like the 4th voice of TLC.
Contributing her vocals to a good half of the album's records to make the sound a lot warmer in Left Eye's absence. Production is handled by the majority of the same team that crafted the first album. We get the likes of their principal producer Dallas Austin on Creep, Case of the Fake People, Take Our Time, and If I Was Your Girlfriend. Jermaine Dupri appears on Kick Your Game and Switch, and Babyface returns for Digging on You, Red Light Special, and Let's Do It Again. That trio also would be joined by new blood in the form of Organized Noise on the songs Waterfalls and Something Wicked This Way Comes, and additional help from my idol, Diddy, and Chucky Thompson, primarily assisting in sequencing and creating the album's hilarious skits. As said before, the album is built around the theme of its title, and is done to perfection, with each adjective getting a fair amount of records exemplifying their core. The crazy side of the album features some of the most danceable tempos and free-forming topics about love and life, whether it be infidelity on Creep and Switch and their self-explanatory Case of the Fake People. Little known fact that Creep originally featured a Left Eye verse that was removed. Being that she hated the song and wrote a rap pretty much going against the notion of cheating back on your man, it makes sense as to why it didn't make the cut. Sexy features some of the most sensual and semi-erotic material from their entire career with songs like Digging on You, Let's Do It Again, Take Our Time, and a very good cover of Prince's If I Was Your Girlfriend. I could try to explain this portion in a deeper, more thought out way, but it goes without saying that these songs are about sex! And not anything with a great deal of subtlety either. They're doing the nasty in any and every way that you want it. I think that this piece greatly highlights the growth of the group from cute girls to fully grown, fine-ass women, and also highlights the improvement in Chili's vocals from album 1 to 2. Great signature breakdowns that she carries, and she's amazing on her solo cut, Take Our Time. Cool contains some of the more grittier, hip-hop fused records, with Left Eye having a verse on all 3. Apart from Kick Your Game being about picking up guys at the club over an elite Jermaine Dupri beat, this is the most thought-provoking segment of the album. Something Wicked This Way Comes is an exploration into the outcasts of our society simply trying to find their way. Felt deep through the hard live guitar presence and deep harmonies. But more importantly, Cool features Waterfalls, the song that would pretty much elevate the group into a global territory. A record about gang life, HIV, and possibly Left Eye's best, or at the very least, most memorable record that she'd ever record. Truly an amazing song that did a great deal in showing that TLC was more than baggy clothes and wild antics. An amazing opening verse from A Tribe Called Quest Phife Dawg immediately sets the tone of something special that we haven't heard prior. A top-notch verse from a still just Dre, Andre 3000 on Something Wicked adds more ambiance, and Diddy and Busta Rhymes on skits create even more laughs. The sessions that T-Boz and Chili describe as fun officially ended in September of 1994, and on all fronts, the group, the producers, and the label all spoke highly of it and said that it would be a hit out the gate. But now it would be up to critics and fans to judge. At November of 1994, the group would appear on their now iconic Vibe magazine cover, which... just look at it, man. Again, the fire made them even bigger. Like, why not capitalize? Brilliant. But that aside, this article is a great insight into the lives of the group and their label during this period, with topics ranging from Chili's then celibacy to T-Boz's perceived dominance over the opposite sex. But of course, nothing was discussed more than the fire. In truth, this article does much to humanize Left Eye and highlight the way that the media villainized her and treated Andre Rison like a sole hero. Yes, she was wrong, but she was far from the only denominator in the incident. Definitely a fabulous read that I recommend you give some eyes to. And the piece built further anticipation for the album as well. November 15th was the moment of truth for the girls, and their second album was ready for store shelves. CrazySexyCool debuted at number 15 on the Billboard 200, selling 77,500 copies in the first week. A slow mover indeed, but it gradually picked up momentum through the massive push of their first single, Creep. Creep dropped the month prior on Halloween and debuted at 71. But through a very iconic music video, massive buzz hit the album. Yes, we've all seen the infamous video with the baggy pajamas and super bright lighting, but in an interesting twist, the song's music video had to be filmed 3 times over the course of 3 months. The first video was shot in Atlanta around the summer of 1994, just before Left Eye's fight with Andre, but it lacked enough footage to be a full quality video, so a reshoot was coordinated. This time, it was done in LA, and frankly, the second video was not very good. Super dark with minimal emphasis on the girls' personalities, and somewhat goes against their image with the ghettoist backdrop displayed. It also was shot in an incredibly similar way to some of their videos of the past, with no real emphasis on how the group had grown from 1992 to 94. Finally, the group would settle on video number 3 after seeing Salt and Peppa's What a Man music video and calling in its director Matthew Ralston to work on their song. And despite the video almost not being completed due to Left Eye's stubbornness over her hatred of the song, which led to her almost going on a protest mid-video, the immediate difference in their look and ambiance is felt at first viewing. The massive plays that it received on MTV would be a great assistance in making Creep a top 10 gold single by the end of the year, only to hit number 1 at the top of 1995. From there, CrazySexyCool would grow and grow and grow until it hit double platinum by the end of the month. The sales remained steady through the number 2 charted Red Light Special, but then Waterfalls came out. Again, the group's signature song that basically catapulted them on a way bigger level, but originally it was not meant to be that way. At its initial release, fans found it to be a bit confusing and off-putting due to the record being so drastically different from anything they released prior, to the point that Clive Davis refused to promote and put money into a video. L.A. Reid, however, would relent and drop $1 million for the visuals. Directed by F. Gary Gray, Waterfall's music video depicts each verse word for word in visual form. Cheyenne getting killed by Bokeem Woodbine in verse 1. Side note, really need to do a video on this kid. A couple catching AIDS in verse 2, and then unseen visual effects to wrap it up. At the same time, this was one of the most expensive music videos of all time at the time, and the result paid dividends. The topic of HIV had never really been so directly referenced in music before, and it had an incredible impact right as the world was nearing the massive climax of the AIDS epidemic. Timing could only really bring this to light, and the sales of CrazySexyCool would go into overdrive when the single dropped on May 29th of that year. Immediately, the song shot up to number 1 and stayed there for 7 weeks. That helped push the buys for the album, and it peaked at number 3 in July, just in time for their participation in the Budweiser Superfest tour that summer and the release of one more single in Diggin' On You. By the completion of the national legs at the end of August, their popularity was at a peak. CrazySexyCool was certified 9 times platinum in February of 1996, and the group won 2 Grammys that same year. It's safe to say that by the end of CrazySexyCool's wild, almost 2-year rollout, they were the biggest group in the world. But the finish line wasn't peachy by any means, with the group filing bankruptcy and being embroiled in a 2-year legal battle with LaFace. But when the dust settled, the group would carry that heavy momentum into their third and what's seen as the group's peak album, Fan Mail. Fairly equal to the success of CrazySexyCool, but most would agree that their second album is the best in their catalog. Its most memorable mark is the way that it didn't totally separate the group from their initial formula, but instead tuned up its elements. They always had substance, even in the silliness of Ooh on the TLC tip, but here they bloomed from cute girls to grown women. And with a good fourth of the album being quintessential songs of the 90s, it's self-explanatory as to why CrazySexyCool is so critically acclaimed. Winning people over with its raw lyricism, heavy improvement in song structure, and the successful pursuit of exploring sounds that went way past R&B. Setting a benchmark for 3-person girl groups that followed them like Destiny's Child, 3LW, Black, and 702. And with that, CrazySexyCool remains a timeless, essential listening album for any 90s music lovers, new and old. What did you think about CrazySexyCool by TLC? How would you rank it amongst their albums? Let me know in the comment section. Be sure to subscribe to my Mama's Garage. I'm Calvin, and I'll see you next time.